Hey,
Hey, Micah. Long
hey,
time.
Ria. How are you?
Great, great. How's your week been going?
It's only Tuesday, so not so bad. It's been going all right. Lots of interesting conversations happening at work already. Seems like it should be like Thursday or Friday by now, but it's only Tuesday. So, how about
Yeah,
you?
I mean, I guess it'll be Thursday or Friday here soon enough. It's been pretty good. I'm based out of New York, and I've tried a couple new restaurants this week. I know we were kind of talking about that a little bit ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm
What's
curious
your
to
new
know.
favorite?
I was, I would say my new favorite is this new place that opened up in the East Village. It's like a Mediterranean Israeli restaurant. It's
Okay.
quite quaint, and I love it because the owner comes in and talks to you like every single table. They just started out, so I love like the intimate experience. What about you? You've been
Nice.
in New York for a long time now.
Yeah. I've tried a lot of restaurants in New York. I really love some of the places in Brooklyn, to be honest. There's a really great little place called James over by like Prospect Heights, I think.
Mhm.
I used to go there all the time. It's really good. And then one of my all-time favorites, I think, is this place called Decibel, which is like a sushi sake place underground. You have to like kind of know where it is to figure out how to get to it. But once you do that, it's worth it. It's very good.
It's like a
That's kind of like
speakeasy vibe.
sort of, yeah. It's like in the Astor Place neighborhood, I think. Yeah, it's very good.
Nice. All
There's
right.
never a shortage of awesome restaurants in New York City.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah. So I guess we can get started here. So hey everyone, welcome to AWS Gen AI Developer Hour. So our motto is we build smarter and not harder. So for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we can start with some introductions. I'm Ria Dani. I'm a solutions architect here at AWS, and I spend a lot of my time helping enterprise customers in the advertisement industry build on AWS. Um, and I have a focus area in AI for developer tools, so that's why I'm here today talking about this. So welcome to our live building show, and um, we have our co-host here, Michael Walters. I'll let you do introduction.
yeah. Nice to see everyone again. Michael Walter here. I can't believe this is our third show now. It's awesome. So, I'm also a solutions architect at AWS. I work with Ria daily, and I've been with AWS for about 4.5 years now, also covering like enterprise advertising, marketing, technology customers.
Mhm.
But I really love building stuff. I use building stuff as a way to learn about whatever it is I'm interested in. Um, and when I'm learning something new, I use building a prototype or building a demo as a way to like solidify those ideas in my mind. So I'm constantly just building little projects, and I've got a nice running list of them going now, especially since Kiro and Q Developer have been around. It's been quite a fun journey. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, thanks for that intro. It's pretty nice how quickly you can build with those sort of tools now. You can get something up and running so fast. It's pretty remarkable. So for anyone that's just getting started, or if you're, a seasoned builder, I think today's show will be pretty exciting. Uh,
yeah,
I'm curious to know where people are joining in from. So I guess I'll drop a banner.
cool, yeah. And while people are chatting in the chat, what are we going to be talking about today, Ria? What's our topic? What are we going over?
Yeah, so I'm sure everyone's seen the title. Hello, Spec-driven development. So we're going to talk about how you can build really detailed applications just by writing a spec doc. We're going to go through the process of, what are the best practices? How can we build in a way that's more optimized for whatever outputs we're looking for? So that's what we're going to be covering today. And I'm also excited because we're going to be using our new Agentic IDE Kiro.
Yeah,
So that'll be fun to explore with.
yeah. So we should probably start with like what is Kiro and what are some of these tools all about. So how would you describe Kiro, Yeah.
Yeah. The way that I would describe it is it's an AI IDE. It helps you, even if you're not a developer, even if you're not, developing on a day to day, it makes it so easy for you to plan whatever you're trying to build without even touching an ounce of code. So, like, if you're trying to, develop an application, right? All you need to do is maybe write out in a detailed manner, like what you're looking for, how you would want to build it, your vision for it. And what Kiro does is it uses AI agents to like go and build whatever it is that you've specified. And it can do it in any language, however way you designed the app to be. And it's pretty cool to see all the different controls that you have. So that's why I've been
Mhm.
really loving it. Um, I know that you've been, building a lot also with it. So I'm curious to know how you
Yeah.
would go ahead and, describe, your way.
I mean, I love it. I was like I was maybe the first to download it when it was launched a couple months ago.
Mhm.
Maybe the third person to download it. I don't know, but I got in there before the wait list started. So there is a wait list for Kiro at the moment,
Yeah.
and hopefully that'll be lifted soon. But yeah, I'm loving it. I've been kind of full bore Kiro since it launched. Um, I think it represents like a real big shift from what we've been kind of getting used to with AI in our coding environment. So over the last couple of years, we've seen like autocomplete kind of stuff in tools like VS Code, where you start typing some code and it sort of completes your thought for you. And then with Q Developer, we started to see like this agentic approach, where it can actually start writing code for you. And now with Kiro and spec-driven development, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot today, it just for me it's like mind-boggling because all of a sudden we have this way of documenting everything we're building as we're building it, and I think that's super critical to like how we as developers start to think about building code with AI in the
Mhm.
future. So I think Kiro is really like heading in the right direction, and it's been a ton of fun,
Mhm.
just kind of getting to know it and trying out like what it can do.
And I feel like a big question that, Kiro sort of addresses is like we see a lot of people using these AI tools in an individual manner. Like if there's a developer, they might be working in a silo interacting with the agent. Um, but where Kiro really comes in, the way that I see it, is it lets you collaborate with like your team members, say you're working with a product manager, say you're working with other engineers. So like how can we collaborate with AI tools along with, your team members? So I think that's what's really interesting. That's the
Mhm.
direction that we're moving towards. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, shall we bring up Kiro and start poking at it and seeing what it can do? What do you think?
Yeah,
You ready?
let's do
Yeah.
it. Let's do it.
All right. So let me bring up mine real quick. Uh, Today's show is going to be fun. We're just going to be switching back and forth, trying out different stuff in our Kiros. But this is Kiro. It is a fork of VS Code, so it looks pretty familiar. If you've ever used VS Code before, um, I have my favorite. Let me show you my favorite extension, which is Catpuccine. So this is an awesome theme for VS Code, but also for Kiro and lots of other tools out there. You can apply this, and it looks awesome because it's purple and black and stuff. So yes, Capuchin works with Kiro. So that just if anyone was wondering. But yeah, you can see it looks a lot like what you're probably familiar seeing with VS Code. You've got your extensions. You've got a little Kiro ghost thing built in here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It's got your debugging area, your file explorer, search, all that kind of normal stuff that you're used to seeing is there. But what's really different, I think, about Kiro is that there's kind of like two paths you can go down. You can select if you want to do vibe coding, or you can do spec-driven coding, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit later. But Riyadh, tell me in your words, what is vibe coding? Because we've been talking about vibe coding for the better
Yeah.
part of the year now, but like, what do you think it is? What?
I feel like a lot of people here might already be, vibe coding. That's like
Yeah.
when these sort of tools came out, that was the standard way to go and build, right? You're just chatting, you're chatting as you build. and you're doing so in like an iterative manner, sometimes you might not really be thinking about, the big picture of the design. You might just be going, from one step to another and building as you go and iterating back and forth. Hey, the AI agent produces something that you don't like. You'll be like, okay, fix it. It's that iterative manner to go and build whatever you'd like. So that's the way that I see vibe coding, and I'm a big vibe coder, so I do love that manner. But spec is pretty new and pretty exciting to see how much more it can do. So what would you say is like your favorite way to work, or do you work with both of them? Like,
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think vibe coding, especially in Kiro, in the context of Kiro. So vibe coding to me is like send a prompt, hit return, and see what it does, and then send another prompt, hit return, and do some more. So it's that kind of iterative process you do with vibe coding, where the agent or the LLM is sort of like taking on most of the responsibility of building what you're kind of thinking about. And I think that's awesome. It's really great for coming up with ideas quickly. It's great for fast prototyping of ideas.
mhm.
Spec-driven development, which is what we're going to get into here in a little while, is like the opposite. Like spec-driven development, you plan everything out in great detail, and you do this with the LLM. So you're still having a conversation, you're still chatting about what it is you're planning, but you're creating these spec documents, which we'll show you here soon,
Mhm.
that help the LLM understand what it is you're building in great detail. And so I feel like spec-driven is great for working on, larger projects, things that have, when you're collaborating with other people, working on a team, and you need to sort of like define the specs of what it is you're trying to build. Spec-driven development really sort of like makes a lot of sense as you kind of like get into it and
Yeah.
start to understand how it works.
I think it really helps you write like better code and catch any issues in your design that you might not think of when you're just vibing in a way. Um, so you end up with something that's a lot more like maintainable, maybe more, production level ready. That's that type of code. Uh,
Yeah.
so would you say that um, both kind of work hand in hand? Like I know some people that start with using spec, and then when they get to uh, an output that they're sort of happy with, and they'll start to, I guess, vibe it out. Is that the same thing that you've seen?
Yeah, I think that's a pattern that makes a lot of sense. So, you build something complex with lots of different specs and pieces, and you sort of work through that. But along the way, there's going to be things that oh, I don't really want to do it that way. So you jump in and kind of use
Hmm.
some vibes to get through it or whatever. So I thought they do kind of work together hand in hand, which is sort of nice. Um, and as you kind of get familiar with how the Kiro interface behaves in that way, it's a pretty nice and smooth process, in
Hmm.
my opinion. Like you can be working through a spec-driven development task, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't want it to write that kind of a commit message. So you can jump in and kind of like redirect things a little bit in the moment. And that's a really nice kind of way to work.
Yeah, I do see this question here where it says, would you use Kiro as you develop the spec, or would you use Q then move that to Kiro? That's a good question, and I guess we didn't address that. So Kiro is like a agentic IDE where if you're using VS Code, if you're using JetBrains, it's like a similar sort of IDE of your choice that you can go ahead and pick. The way that Q Developer and Kiro work is that Q Developer can be installed in whatever IDE you're using, whatever language. Both can be used parallelly. But a lot of the functionality that we see with Q Developer, that's also integrated within Kiro. For example, if you want to go ahead and install MCP servers, you can in Kiro, and you can also in Q Developer as well. So if you want to, use Q Developer, maybe in a JetBrains looking IDE, that might be, your way to go. But if you're looking towards more of like a VS Code fork style sort of agentic IDE, that's when Kiro can also be good to explore. So it's tooling of your choice, IDE of your choice, and we sort of meet you wherever you are in that way.
Yeah, I would add, I think Kiro is like an opinionated IDE. Like it has opinions. It's presenting you an interface that wants to do things in kind of a certain way. VS Code is like a Swiss Army knife, right? You can plug in all sorts of things into it. You can customize it, make it however you want it to be. You can use QDeveloper in there. You can use other tools, whatever you like. Kiro has, you can still do a lot of customizations and things in Kiro, but it's a little more opinionated in the way it sort of presents things to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what should we do? Should we start off and kind of write some code and see where we go, or what do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Should we first talk about what, application we're going to be building today?
Yes,
What's an
yeah.
elaborate application?
It's so elaborate, you're all gonna laugh. We're gonna build a Hello World application. And that sounds pretty boring when you first hear it, I know, because everyone's built a Hello World application. But let's talk about why this is so important, right? So for me, Hello World is like the first step to understanding something new, right? So like any framework you want to learn, any new language you're trying to learn about, any like new infrastructure you're trying to deploy onto, like the first example code, the first like little, chapter one is Hello World. It's the first thing you do to try to like get yourself familiar with what you're about to embark on. And so, yeah, we're going to write Hello World, but we're going to do it in a way here that's like, we're going to start with vibe coding and see what we get. And then we're going to do like spec-driven Hello World, which in my opinion is going to hopefully give us one of the most elaborate Hello Worlds I've ever built. So we'll see what happens. But that's my plan. What do
Yeah,
you
who knew Hello World could get this elaborate, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the goal is to compare, both of the different methods to showcase, what spec really allows you to do. And I guess the reason why we chose this application is so we can walk you through on the different steps of the spec-driven process and how you can use it for like more complex use cases, obviously, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So why don't we start in vibe? So in Kiro, you have like this toggle, basically. You can pick vibe or spec. And when you do that, you kind of like go down a different path. And so we're going to start with vibe. And this is what's going to be, should be pretty familiar if you've ever used QDeveloper or pretty much any other AI-driven kind of coding assistant. You can just basically tell it what you want. So we're going to build Hello World. So let's do it in Python. How's that sound? Okay, so I'm going to say like build me a Hello World, oops, example in Python, right? So pretty straightforward. Let's see what happens. So Kiro is thinking. Okay, so it's built. It's just about finished already. so now if we go over here and we take a look at what it's built, you can see it's pretty simple, right? There's not a whole lot to this. It actually wrote more than it needed to, right? You can get by with just this line right here. Can you see that okay, Ria? Does that look all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can just, in a Python program, you can just type print hello world and it'll do it. But it's added a few things. It added a thing at the top here to let us know which language to execute with. It created a main function in Python, and it created a little command line, call that main function thing. This is like a Python standard practice or whatever. So it's done, and we can run this. So I can open my terminal in Kiro too. Here we go. And I can write Python 3 hello world, and there it is, right? Very nice. So we're done, right? We're all done. That was easy. And it, like with almost every coding assistant, you'll get like a little synopsis of what you just built as part of the kind of like follow up to the chat. And so with vibe coding, like we can continue, like we can do more, right? So like, let's, how about adding command line arguments so I can say, hello, Ria, something like that, right? So now it's going to go and think through that, and it's going to change my program a little bit. It's going to tell me a bit about what it's just changed, but you can take a look at the code. It's relatively straightforward again. now we are using the sys package in Python. Are they called packages in Python? I think so, or modules or whatever, libraries. And it's going to allow us to pass in something. And if we don't pass anything, it's going to print out a default. So let's try it again. So Python hello world just prints out hello world, but I can say hello Ria. Let's see if that works. Yeah, hello Ria. So now it says hello Ria. And so there's our hello world in vibe coding mode. And so like I mentioned, you can kind of like iterate. You can continue to add prompts and tell it to change things, to do more, or whatever you like, right? And so you can, make this more robust. You can make this more. You can add tests like unit tests or whatever you can kind of come up with. But the whole point is you're sort of doing this in this like conversational style, iterative approach in vibe coding mode.
It seems like with vibe coding, if you want to build something a lot faster, if you don't have a fully fledged out idea, you can kind of think with the agent and come up with something there. And that's where you'll sort of see the difference with spec and vibe.
Exactly.
That being said, should we take a look at spec now?
Yes. Let me switch windows here real quick. So open.
Okay. I can also pull up mine if that's.
Yeah. So I was thinking what we would do is we should each do a spec-driven hello world. But so I want to talk a little bit about some other capabilities here before we actually start writing prompts for spec. So here's what happens. Like when you write a prompt for a spec-driven development thing, like how we have it here, it's going to go off and create a few files. One is the specs, one is the design document, and then there's like a list of tasks that you can go through and do. But there's another capability of Kiro that's super powerful, and I suggest if you're going to do this, to think about this other capability, which is called steering documents. And so steering documents you can think of them as like guidelines that every request you send to the large language model takes into consideration. So it's things like, I always want to use the UV package manager, or I always want to write really verbose commit messages, or I'd like to, use test-driven development in this project. So you can create a spec document, which we'll do here in a second. And then from then on, every time you create a spec or do anything really with the large language model in the chat, it'll add that to the context and use those documents to sort of direct what it is you're trying to do. And these are super powerful because if you don't do that, like the LLM kind of comes up with its own opinions and it'll start to do things that you might not really want to do, even though they might be correct. They're not really how you'd like to kind of structure things.
So I guess we have some like Kiro related lingo here. So we have like the agent steering docs, and then we also have the spec MD files. And just to provide, kind of like what we're talking about. So the steering doc that Micah is showing on the bottom here, you'll see agent steering. So what this lets you do is if you have like a certain a style of coding, so if you want to, establish a coding standard across your enterprise, you can write all of that down in the steering doc, so that everything that the agent provides, it's going to follow that context and that standard that you've written down. So it follows those best practices, or like the example Michael was saying, if you want to use the UV package, it will follow that. But then so that's the steering, but then we also have the spec, and those are the detailed requirements of whatever application you're trying to build. And you can have more than one spec built off on top of each other as well as you're, developing your application further.
Exactly. And if you were paying attention, if you just click generate steering docs, it's going to automatically look at your repository, scan it. So if you have an existing project, it'll scan through that repo and start you off with like a template of a steering doc based on what your project already is, which is really powerful. So you don't have to like type the whole thing out. But in this case, we're starting with a blank slate. We have nothing in this repository. It's just an empty folder. So I'm going to have to tell it to create a steering doc. So let me try and do that. Like, let's create a steering doc. I want to always use the Python UV package manager. I also want to adhere to test-driven development best practices. What else can we do? I'd like to use verbose commit messages when checking in my code. And so you can kind of like come up with whatever it is all the different kind of things that you'd like to do as a developer, you can kind of put into this steering doc. And you can make multiple steering docs. You can add to them later and edit them as you go. So let's see what this does. So it's taking a look at what is in the current repo, but there's nothing. So it's creating a new steering doc, and we can click on it and see what it's doing. All right, it's all done.
We just got a comment here saying, make sure you threaten it with no mistakes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's a thing. Like you'll see here, I'm very polite when I talk to my LLMs. I like to say please and thank you a lot, which I'm not sure really matters, but maybe one day it will. We'll see. But here, yeah, so it's created a steering doc. It says to always use UV as the Python package manager, and it gives some info on how to do that, which is great. Test-driven development, so write tests before implementing functionality. This is really interesting because if you use vibe coding mode, what I've found is that it'll write tests for you, and sometimes it'll do that without even asking it to. But it writes them, in parallel with the code it writes. So it's not really doing test-driven development. It's doing like, yes, we're writing tests also. But test-driven development, if you're not familiar, the idea is that you write a failing test first before you write any code, and then you write your code to pass the test. Basically, that's the cycle, and then you iterate. So it's basically giving some context around how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little bit of info about my verbose commit messages.
So that's pretty elaborate. Like it's a lot of detail, the additional detail added in terms of like the quality standards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's the whole idea. And this is really awesome, especially if you're working with a team and you already have standards like this. You can share these steering docs. You can create like a standard steering doc that everyone on your team at least has to use as like a baseline, so that everyone is always sort of, doing similar things at least, right?
And this kind of comes back to the idea that I was mentioning in the beginning. It's like, you can collaborate with, your engineers on your team, and this would be the source of truth for the standard. And you have the control to, explicitly define those things here. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing to add here before I jump into spec is that it's a markdown file. And so you'll see it in the Kiro tab. You'll see these steering documents and spec files, but you can also just go into your file browser and look under the .kiro folder that's created for you. And there's a section called steering, and you'll see it's just a regular markdown file. So you can commit this to your repository. You can commit this to a more centralized repository if you're sharing it with others, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty handy that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, so let's do the next thing. Let's create a spec. I'm just going to close this, make it a little bit easier to read. So I'm gonna create a new session here for this. So I'm going to use spec mode. And so this is the fun part, coming up with like the initial prompt, right? So, and Ria, maybe while I'm doing this, you can do your own in your window. We can kind of compare how things went. So I'm going to say, I'd like to build.
Are you doing it in Go or which one?
I'm gonna do Python because that's what I started with the steering doc, but it doesn't matter. You can do Python too. I'd like to build a hello world example application. I'd like it to allow the user to pass an argument from the command line. So it can say, hello, Ria. That's kind of it. And so like the fun thing here is that I'm basically doing exactly what we did with the vibe mode, like not a whole lot more information here, but we're going to see it's going to come up with, well, hopefully it'll come up with, a pretty elaborate spec. So I'm going to hit enter and let's see what happens. So you can see right away, it's pulling in my steering document into the context. And now it's creating this new file called requirements.md. And if I go over to my little ghosty guy, here it is. So it's already done with the first requirements document. So we can take a look through. So it's asking me to take a look at the requirements, make sure they're okay before we move on to the design phase. And you'll see now there's sort of like these 3 tabs. I'll make this a little smaller like that. Okay, so there's like these 3 tabs up at the top: requirements, design, and task list. So we're currently in the requirements section. And you can see what it's done is it's created this markdown file, has sort of a summary of what we're building, and it creates these different requirements and user stories. So the first one says, as a user, I want to run a command line application with my name as an argument so that I receive a personalized greeting message. Okay, and it gives you a bunch of criteria for that one as well. So like when the user provides Ria as the argument, then the system shall display, hello, Ria. Requirement 2, as a user, I want clear feedback when I don't provide the required argument, so on and so forth. So it's using the application correctly. As a user, I want to get help information about the application. So it's picked up on the idea that I'm building a command line utility, and it wants to offer some standard help information to someone who's using this. That's nice. And that was it. Okay, so let's, I think that's pretty good. Ria, is there anything you would change here?
That looks pretty detailed to me. I did something similar, but did you do the personalized greeting as well? Okay, nice.
Yeah.
I did that too, and in my prompt, I told it to take a look at edge cases as well during like the unit test phase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move on to the design phase, and then maybe we can compare what we're building. So all you have to do is hit this button, move to design phase, and now it's going to do the second part, which is to create the design phase document. So design.md. While it's doing that, you can see in the Kiro, the .kiro hidden folder here, there's now a spec called Hello World CLI, and it's putting these into separate files called requirements and design. So these are, again, these can get committed to your Git repository. So you create like a source of truth kind of document. All right, let's see what it's done. So let's close this and take a look at our design document. Okay, so it's created kind of it's telling us kind of like the technical implementation of what we're going to do here. So it gives us sort of a summary. It wants to use the arg parse module for parsing command lines. And this is different than what we've had in the Vibe version of this, right? We had, it used the sys module to pull in arguments. So it wants to use a more sophisticated module here, which is fine. It talks through like how it's going to structure the repository. This is interesting. So it's got a source folder with our Hello World application. It's got the argument parsing bit here. It has a tests folder and a README document. So it's kind of structured the whole project here for us and given us sort of like a visualization of what that'll look like. And then going down here, it starts to talk through all the different components and interfaces. And you can see it's getting like really elaborate here, right? It's coming up. It has a greeter module that contains the core greeting logic. It's creating a CLI module that handles command line argument parsing. It's talking through some of the details of how it's going to actually write that code before it has written anything. And so as like a dev team, you can come in here and be like, I don't think so. We're not using arg parse. I don't like that module. We want to use my module. So you can change things around either by manually editing this file or talking to the chat interface to do the same thing.
One thing, so I see that there's a question here.
Yeah.
So someone's, if they're trying to make an app and you might need another service like an S3 bucket, would Kiro suggest that service? Yeah, it would suggest, different database options. It would help be that, AI assistant in terms of like developing an architecture. And also because it's an agent, right? It has the ability to go and if you're hooked up to your AWS credentials, it has the ability to go ahead and create the bucket, add to it. And what Mike is showing here is he's interacting with Kiro through the chat, but then there's also the terminal, the CLI, which is also another way to interact with the agent here.
Yeah.
So in short answer, yes, that's possible. It does help you suggest and help you set that up.
Yeah, exactly. So like in my initial prompt, I didn't mention like infrastructure or anything like that, but if I wanted to, I could have added, oh, and let's make this a Lambda function and come up with a
Mhm.
CloudFormation template to deploy it to the cloud. All that kind of stuff you can add in, and it will help build all that out in the same kind of process.
It'll also
Um,
help you build an architecture diagram too, right? Like,
yep,
yeah. So if you want to use an MCP server to build an architecture, that's definitely very common nowadays too.
totally. So just kind of going through here real quick. So it's coming up with data models, command line. So it's going like above and beyond for a Hello World program, in my opinion, but that's all right. Error handling, system errors, exit codes, and then the testing strategies. This is the part I really care about. So I really love test-driven development. So it's going to write unit tests for each module, and it's just talking through like what those unit tests will do and what the coverage should look like and that kind of stuff. So pretty verbose. So now that we're happy with the design document, you can move on to the implementation plan. And this is the part where it's literally going to print out a bunch of tasks to do. And it depends on what you're building. It can be anywhere from like half a dozen to like many dozen tasks that it'll ask you to kind of go through and work on. Let's see, it's already done. So let's take a look at the task list. So you can see here now we have, how many tasks do we have? Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tasks for our Hello World program. And so you can see each task is kind of broken down into a few subtasks, but it kind of just explains like what each task is going to be all about. And so this is the actually, like we haven't written any code yet, right? So this is where we actually will start to build our project out. So if I click finalize task list, it'll just tell me what I've done. At this point, like if I'm actually building something, usually at this point, I like to do a git commit because I haven't actually written any code yet, but I've created all these documents. So I like to commit my intention to Git and then start building, start the tasks. And what's nice about this interface is that you can go over and just click on start task. And so watch what happens when I do this. So if I click start task, it creates a new session over here. It brings in my steering documents. And behind the scenes, it's bringing in all this context, the tasks, the design, the requirements, all the stuff it's going to need. And so it says, I'll implement task 1 to set up the project structure and configuration. Let me start by updating the task status and then implementing each part. And so now I'll initialize the Python project using UV. So remember in my steering document, I said I'd like to use the UV package manager. Lo and behold, we're using UV, which is nice. So I can click the run button here. And now it's running code in my terminal. It's running that UV initialize command. And so from here, you can kind of just click run and sort of do things. And as you're going through, you can change stuff. So if I don't like the name of this folder or whatever, I can say, oh, you know what, I'd like to change that, but I'm just gonna go with it.
I just saw a comment says, what, really? Pretty amazing, right? It can
Yeah,
act on behalf of you in your CLI.
exactly. So it's right now it's just creating structure. We're building some folders. It's sort of getting stuff set up. It's creating an init Python file. And if we go into the file explorer, you can see it's starting to actually write a bunch of code. And here it all is.
Nice.
And now it wants to add the testing module for Python using UV. So that's nice. So it's going to install this package. And it realized that we don't need a main.py file, so it's just cleaning some stuff up as it's building. And UV sync, we'll run that. So it's finished with task number 1, and take a look. So like, if we look at the task list, we can see task has been completed, right? So it's done all the initial configuration and everything. You can actually look at the changes it's done. You can look at the execution, which is basically this chat transcript here. So you can kind of go back and take a look at what has transpired. I really like to do a git commit at the end of each task. So if I finish this task, I would normally do like, all right, let's commit this to git. I'm not going to do that now, but that's a good practice, I find, because you can kind of keep track along the way of what you're doing.
I think it's nice that it also provides you the task list, like in the right corner. If you open the task list,
this thing here,
the history, and then also the task list, so you can go back and like revert changes. Yeah. So say
they're all currently done, so you can actually go through and start multiple tasks at the same time, and it'll show you like the status of all those different ones.
Yeah, so you can go get a coffee while
yeah,
Kiro's working for you.
Exactly. Cool. So let's do the next task. So the next task is to implement the core greeting functionality using test-driven development. So this will be fun. So I'll click Start Task. I have to get out of this task list so you can see it. Where is it? That's the previous one. Here we are. Okay, so on another tab here, it's starting to go through and create the core functionality, but it's going to use test-driven development. So it's going to start by writing a test. So it's going to run PyTest to see what that does. But before we do that, let's take a look at what it wrote under tests, test greeter. Cool. So here's the tests, right? So it created a bunch of different unit tests, different edge cases, different kind of core cases. What happens if there's like numbers in the username, stuff like different kinds of characters. Pretty verbose, right? It does a pretty good job of coming up with a list of tests. So let's run this, and it should fail, right? All the tests here should fail because we haven't written any code yet. And look at that, they all fail, which is nice. So it says perfect, the tests all fail as expected because we haven't implemented them yet. And now it's going to go in and write the greeter module. Let's take a look at what that file looks like. So it's starting to create the greeter module. It's really done a nice job of commenting. This is like your standard Python commenting structure, or that's how you're supposed to write comments or documentation in your Python functions. It's got, remember, we're just building hello world. So it's done quite a bit. Let's run the tests again. And they've passed. So now we have the test have passed because we've written implementation code that meets those test criteria. And then you can actually run a Python program to see what happens here. Hello, Ria. So it worked. So we're printing the create greeting function with Ria's name in there. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that seems to have worked. And so now it's going to give me like a synopsis of everything that we just built. So you can kind of get a sense, like we're working our way through these tasks. We are building this thing according to the specs we've already defined. And along the way, we can kind of like shift gears or make changes as we sort of see fit. Ria, are you working on one as well in the background?
Yes, I am. So I can share screen.
Yes, let's see what you got.
All right, hopefully you should be able to see my screen.
Let me remove. There we go. Yep.
There we go. Yeah, so I'm working on something similar. So I started off with a similar prompt as to what Micah was doing, but one thing I wanted to focus on was covering edge cases in the test portion here. And I let it know, hey, let's start with the steering doc, identifying the best practices. So what it did was it created this Python best practices MD file. So these are some, different aspects or different contexts it'll provide for every conversation I have with the agent. So, write the clear README files, do error handling, use PyTest as the testing framework, and we're aiming for above 90%. So I was pretty generic in my prompt, but kind of going back to how Kiro is opinionated in a way. So it's making decisions for you if you're not being very explicit. So in this example, I could have said, hey, maybe I want 95% test coverage, and I could have specified that. But it went with 90%. So these are different aspects that you'll see with Kiro in terms of decisions it can make or assume for you. So then after the steering doc, it started creating the Python Hello World app. So we were at the requirements.md and it did everything. But then I decided that I actually wanted to write this into a Lambda function, and then so I can deploy it on AWS. So I actually went back and edited my requirements. Well, I didn't do it. Well, I told, Kiro, hey, I want to actually change the design, update the plan. So what it did was it regenerated the text and updated this whole plan to include, writing this into a Lambda function so I can deploy on AWS, right? And these are some different user stories that it created. And it's a personalized greeting, similar to what Michael has shown in terms of like, hello, X name, right? So then it added all these edits to the file, updating everything in terms of what the input should look like, what the testing strategy should look like, and the integration tests for the Lambda handler, right? So the API gateway, simulation, error handling, all of that. So I got to that part here, and yeah, so this is what the design looks like.
Can you make it a little bigger? Just zoom in a little touch.
Yeah, is this better?
Yeah, do one more
Cool.
if you can.
One more?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's much better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's looking at empty or white space only inputs, that sort of thing. Long names, truncating all of that. So it looks like it's just following the best practices in general. Yeah.
How many tasks did it come up with for you?
Yeah, so I was looking at that. So there's about 5 to 6 tasks. So the fifth one is the deployment configuration. It's creating the SAM template for us. Task 1 is completed, and I can take a look at what the tasks that are in queue are. So current one's task 2. So this is a nice way to look at, hey, like how far along are we? So I can go work on another project and come back to it. And that's pretty cool.
Is that how you prefer to do this? Do you like to go through and start all the tasks and then come back later, or do you like to kind of babysit it and work with it one by one? What's your preferred method?
Yeah, so up until maybe task 5, I would just let it go, and then if I want to vibe code or tweak the application in any way, so I can kind of switch from going from spec to vibe and add some more elements in there. So that's the way that I would prefer to do it, and that's just my style. But obviously, you could wait for each task, check it, see if it's the way that you like, and then go back and iterate. So it really depends on your working style here.
So one thing, a little trick I really love with Kiro is that, let me show you my screen real quick, and I'll, 1 second. Sorry to take over here, but one trick I have is that there's a couple buttons here. Like, so when you're doing a spec-driven development task, you'll get down to a spot where it's waiting for your input, right? So it says it wants to run this PyTest command. And you can either just click run, but you can also click trust. And what that will do is it will, anytime you come to a similar command or the same command, it'll just do it automatically. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to come in and click run every time. So I do this for certain commands that I know, like the PyTest. I just want to run it. I don't want to think about it. So I can click trust, and it'll tell me some options here, which are, is it the full command? So anytime it says run PyTest -v, or partial, or just the base, like UV. So you can decide, how granular you want to be here in terms of like what you're allowing it to trust. So for this one, I'm going to do the full command, run PyTest -v. And so now, and then you can go back in settings and change this later if you don't like what you've done, but you can see. So now it's come to a different UV run command, but it's not PyTest, it's just Python. And so I'm going to do that manually and get the output I want. Same thing with this one, we'll do that manually. And so the idea being, eventually, if it comes back around to doing a test again, it should just do it automatically. Let's see. Of course, it's doing other things now. Anyway, oh, it's finished that task is what happened. Okay.
Interesting.
So we're almost, what do we have, about 8 minutes left here today. So should we kind of like recap a little bit, Ria? Do you want to come back to what we're talking
Before we
about?
do that, I just wanted to show one more thing that I thought was pretty interesting.
On yours? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So a bunch of these tasks are on queue. But one more thing that I thought was pretty cool was the hooks. So say I'm kind of lazy to like update my documentation in a way, like say I have it in English, but I also want to like store in Spanish. So this is a pretty cool aspect that I've been using lately, where for like developing workshops, that whenever I save an MD file or save a specific file in English, I'm like, hey, do this in Spanish too. And the way that you would set that up is just like describing what I just said here in natural language, and you can create that sort of hook. So that's a pretty neat capability within like Kiro as well. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, let's recap. I know we did a lot today, and I hopefully we didn't lose anybody. Yeah. So I guess, do you want to start us off, Micah?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So we've been kind of exploring spec-driven development using Kiro. So Kiro's a new IDE from AWS. It lets you choose between two different modes, which are vibe coding versus spec-driven development. And we've been really just like, the whole point here is to build like a very straightforward hello world application using spec-driven development, because spec-driven development is very verbose. It tells you all the different details of what it is it's going to do. It allows you to go in and adjust things to taste. We talked a bit about steering documents and hooks and some of the kind of core capabilities of Kiro, and just kind of exploring like what it's like to do spec-driven development, which in my opinion is like the way.
I think also, like, to summarize spec-driven development, there's like 3 different phases. You start off with the design. Once you have that figured out, then you go, you start off with the requirements, what you want the application to be, and then what it designs it for you, and then you go into tasks. And you have the control to, adjust any one of these and have the AI agent do all this work in terms of creating a plan, executing things on behalf of you, all for you. And that's all part of the spec mode here. But again, it's up to you if you prefer vibe or spec, whatever that works with your way of developing. I'm seeing some funny comments here.
Interesting. All right, let me, if you don't mind, I'll bring up my screen for a moment.
Yeah.
I just want to show you how far I've gotten. I'm almost to the end of my task list. So for those who have just joined, I've been building a Hello World application using spec-driven development and Python. We're on currently on task number 5 out of 7. So it's waiting for me. So it's actually done almost everything. It was going to do some integration tests and some documentation. We don't have to worry about that at the moment, but let's take a look at what it's actually built. So it's just testing all the commands here to kind of finish out this task right now, but we can jump in here. If I pull up my terminal, oh yeah, it's finished that task. So now I can run UV hello world or UV run hello world, and I didn't give it any arguments, so it gave me an error. Nice, very nice error. So I can run it with my name, and look at that. Or it's hello Micah, or I can run. I'm guessing it's help. Let's see if that's the thing. Yep. So I typed -help, and it gives me some standard command line help stuff. So it tells me what the program is, what the argument is, and then some information about how to get help, which is nice. So it works. Looks like it works.
Awesome.
If you want to take a look at the code real quick, let's see what it's built. So according to the design document, it's pretty much built everything we had in mind, including a source folder with the Hello World program. So here's the main program. And it's done a really nice job documenting every function, using best practices, best coding practices, using nice error handling. We also did test-driven development, so it's written me a bunch of tests. Here's a test for the greeter module. Close this, make it a little bigger. So you can see it's created a nice comprehensive testing suite, which we can...
All of this was through prompt engineering. Yeah.
Yep. I haven't written a single line of code during this whole hour we've been on here. Pretty cool.
Yeah. I do see a couple questions in terms of when it's available. Is this generally available? All sort of things. So there is a free tier for Kiro as well, but I think there's still a wait list right now. But you can add yourself to the wait list, put your email in, and hopefully it will be GA here soon. We just want to do a sneak peek, a preview of what's coming and all the things that you can do with spec-driven development. And again, spec-driven development isn't just for Kiro. You can also do this in any sort of AI tooling of your choice, whether you're using QDeveloper or Claude Code, all sorts of things. So you can still do spec-driven development and other AI tools. It's just in Kiro, it's a little bit more integrated.
Yep. Awesome. And there's a question here. Is there a free tier? Yes, there'll be a free tier for Kiro. If you go to kiro.dev and look at the pricing page, you can see all the different pricing plans that are there. They were recently updated, actually, as of yesterday, I think. So take a look at that. And then this last question, how about taking a spec app to production? So yeah, part of your spec can be to build a CloudFormation template or a SAM template or any kind of other infrastructure as code document like Terraform or something like that. And you can use that to deploy into your AWS account. And so that's kind of like the methodology. And then, Ria, do you want to talk a little bit about...
Yeah, this is a good segue into what I was going to suggest next. So there's a new framework / methodology called AI DLC. So our VP of Agentic AI, Swami, he introduced this about a month ago. And if you just look up AI DLC, AWS, you'll see it. So the way that this works is we are proposing this methodology where organizations can use AI in every aspect of the software development lifecycle. So for example, handling implementation tasks like, orchestration of the workflow or breaking down the tasks, coding, testing, deploying. So how AI is integrated in each aspects of this software development lifecycle is what this framework focuses on. And there's a lot of blogs out there that we've released on this topic as well. But this is mainly to help take applications to production.
Right.
So that's the goal there.
We got to go.
On time. It was great. This was a great episode. Thanks, Micah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.